So in this video, I'm going to be making an update on Ravencoin, RVN USDT. I made a video about this on March 13th, 2024, so about a month ago. And I think since, we've had some bullish developments since my video, and since we're now getting a retracement, I think it's a good time to make an update on this and a lot of the other altcoins that I've made videos on. I think we're in a pretty interesting spot. We may be approaching the point on some altcoins where there is potential for a swing higher low to be put in. And I want to do some investigating in the charts to try and determine what I think the probabilities of a higher low are, and go over some of the lower time frame developments that I'd like to see to kind of sway my opinion one way or another. If we start seeing signs of strength here, there is a better likelihood that the higher low is in. But if we just keep seeing nothing but bearishness, then potentially we do have to retrace much lower. So I posted that video on March 13th. So at that point we were right around here, and I titled that video multiple bullish confirmations. So I was seeing bullish confirmations on Market Cipher. I was liking the weekly money flow, how it was starting to turn to the upside. On the daily, we were seeing, higher lows being put in. We saw a very deep wave in the red back here. And, overall, during this whole time where we were sitting at the lows and kind of this accumulation phase, money flow had spent a lot of time in the red, not very much time in the green. And what we were seeing at the time was money flow got a pretty thick move into the green, actually put in higher highs compared to back here, and just got a shallow move into the red, almost like a trigger wave for money flow before it continued to the upside. And at the time, money flow on the daily was getting very thick. We saw momentum above the 60 line. Overall, we were seeing some signs of strength on Market Cipher, and perhaps more importantly, we started seeing signs of strength in the price action, with price action changing market structure. At the time, we had just broken above what I would call the lower high on definitely the daily and potentially even the weekly time frame. And this is a sign of strength for the bulls. Essentially, the bears had been in control for a very long time. Since all-time highs, we were in a downtrend, and therefore the bears were in control. And if I mark out the swing structure of the downtrend, we had the high, we have a significant low, the first low before a significant retrace. Then the next time we come down to touch the low before a significant retrace was right here. We get that retrace for a lower high. And at this point, it is a pretty strong trend. Price is putting in significant lower lows. We closed candles well below this lower low, and just ultimately it's looking like a strong trend. But as we started approaching this range that we are in now, we saw signs that the downtrend was weakening or losing steam. And we can tell that because price was no longer able to put in significant lower lows. In fact, it just came down and essentially SFP'd the lower high. We did close, slightly below it. It's barely a break though, and the fact that we pulled up immediately, I look at that more of an SFP than like an actual continuation of structure. But regardless, we still put in a lower low. We had a significant enough retrace, even on the weekly time frame. It is a little cluttered there. It's not exactly the same swing structure as we saw before, but you still can look at it as a retracement. And then yet again, we come down to SFP the low. So we're clearly seeing that the downtrend is weakening by the fact that we're not able to continue much lower from this point. Price is even getting that kind of rounded shape that you see with accumulation phases. And then we start getting hints that maybe the bullish strength may be increasing. We come up to test the last lower high. Now, granted, it was a failed attempt at breaking the high. It was an SFP of the high, but this was the first time that we actually came up to test a lower high. We put in this lower high, never came back up to touch it. We put in this lower high up here, never came back to touch it, never came even close. After we see that the downtrend is weakening, we now see that we're coming up to try and test some lower highs. It was a failed test, we get a retrace, and then by the time I looked at this asset, we had actually come up and broken above this last wick. So, we failed to break above it here. I then extended up to the high of the wick that failed to break structure. That is my new break of structure line. And we did close candles above it. We even closed multiple weekly candles up there, with each weekly candle closing higher than the last. Granted, it's not a super strong close in this area, but it is the most significant close that we saw. It is much better than just wicking it out. So again, we are seeing signs that the bearish strength is decreasing and the bullish strength is increasing. And from there, what happened? Well, we got a little retracement, and then we got an even greater sign of bullish strength with this very aggressive move to the upside, closing candles very well above, the last market structure point. We closed very significantly above. This is a very good showing of strength for the bulls, closing this high up here on the weekly time frame. And I think this is also important. We also closed a monthly candle up at that same spot. If the weekly closed up here, but the monthly just had a massive wick that came all the way back down here and closed, like if we didn't close the monthly and the weekly at the same time, it'd be a little bit more sketchy, even though I would not call this, a monthly downtrend, at least not this part over here. You could maybe argue that this is a monthly lower high, but yeah, the fact that we closed a monthly candle up here is good as well. And overall, we are, yet again seeing the bullish strength continuing. We saw, a pretty decent sign of strength with some closes above there, and now we're seeing an even better sign of strength with a more aggressive close. As opposed to the bearish trend, which was weakening with the SFPs getting more and more shallow, the lower highs not really getting much of, a retracement, which you may actually think is a bearish thing. Like, oh, price didn't get that much of a move to the upside. How is that more of a bullish thing? We got a very weak move up and then immediately came back down to the low. And you can argue that. However, I think it's more of a bullish thing because it allowed for us to break structure here. If this move got a very large move to the upside before coming back down to the low, we may have not even broken structure yet. Price not being able to put in significant lower lows is definitely a sign of weakness for the bear trend, and the fact that we got very shallow retracements means that we can flip market structure sooner. So yeah, we saw signs that the bear trend was overall weakening, and now we are continuing to see signs of greater and greater strength on the bull side, with more aggressive closes further up. Market structure itself is, kind of subjective in the way that people use it. People look at it in different ways. Some people may look even on the weekly time frame as we're still in a downtrend. Maybe you don't like calling this a retracement on the weekly, and therefore we would just kind of go down to the lower low. Maybe we could just be putting in a lower high for another lower low, right? You could look at it like that. It is a bit subjective as to how you use it. But based on my opinion of this market structure and the way that I use it, I am looking at this as, a pretty good sign of strength. I think a better sign of strength would be breaking above this high eventually, but, if you're waiting for that, price action may not get there for quite a long time here. And, ultimately, I am looking at this, at least on the daily time frame, as a surefire change of structure. This is the, strongest sign of strength that we've seen on the daily time frame in quite a long time. I wouldn't really call this a daily break over here. It's a little sketchy, especially since you couldn't even argue that there was a weekly break back in this time. It was very clearly we put in a significant lower low. We're probably just coming up for a lower high, and that's what it was. Here you can argue that we have a weekly break. You can, clearly see these signs that, the downtrend is weakening. Could even argue Wyckoff involvement here with a little uno dos trace. So I think ultimately right now there are more signs of strength than we've seen previously, even if we, kind of had a false break in this area, which did result in a significant move to the upside, but ultimately price did come back down to the low. Now, at the time, Market Cipher, I'd say, was not looking as good either. Kind of outlining the general flow of Market Cipher, it was still on its way down, whereas at this point you can argue it's probably more in its bottoming out phase, maybe even curving back up to the upside. Put it in its lowest point here. Now it's been on a pretty steady move up. There's also other signs of strength on Market Cipher, like weekly momentum, putting in higher highs, getting above the 60 line. So, yeah, with that being said, I'm looking at these market structure developments as being more significant than anything we've seen in this bear market. But that, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be just up from here. One thing I'm not doing is I'm not looking at this as, okay, we're seeing some signs of strength. That must automatically equal some ridiculous target like all-time high of the previous bull market. I am not looking at it like that. I'm not going to trade it like that. And, everybody has their own way of doing things. Maybe you're actually bullish fundamentally on this asset. I am not, because I don't even know what it does fundamentally. I'm purely looking at the charts right now. And the way that I come up with trading plans and, execute on my ideas, regardless of the asset that I'm trading, regardless of the time frame, it is all relatively similar in the sense that I come up with local trades, local invalidations for my ideas, local targets for my trades to take profits and de-risk my trade, and all that. It isn't just like, oh, I'm seeing signs of strength here, so now I think this has to go to all-time highs. I'm definitely not looking at it like that. But I could say with pretty good confidence that I think our probabilities of at least tackling this significant high over here are greatly increased now that we've had this aggressive weekly bullish break. So this right here, this high, is going to be a significant target for me. And depending on what happens there, I, could expect maybe a reversal and maybe a continuation of this range, or maybe we break above it significantly, and maybe I then look for higher targets. So now let's talk about where price is at right now. We have just gotten a pretty serious retracement following this aggressive break. We're coming back down to retest a pretty important area. You can call this a significant support resistance flip. This in general was resistance in this area, even had a little bit of resistance here. You can argue some support. Ultimately, this is just a significant zone where price either rejected before going lower, or found a little bit of a stopping point in this sense before it continued higher. You saw that it acted as resistance for a little bit before we actually got that aggressive move to the upside. And basically, once we broke significantly past this box, that's when we got the aggressive move. So you can argue we're retesting a support resistance flip, and maybe I want to make this box green because ideally it should now act as support for us. But let's pull out some other TA and see if we can find some confluence in this area. So first, I have a Fibonacci retracement pulled from basically the expansion leg from the low to the high. And, right now we're sitting in between the golden pocket 786. This is, typically a pretty important area to hold. So, that is a, pretty common retracement target. A lot of people look for higher lows or lower highs to be put in between the golden pocket 786. Also, putting on the anchored VWAP from the all-time low, we are, pretty much retesting that as support as well. On the weekly, we just wicked down past it. Now we're kind of coming down to retest it again. There have been some points where this anchored VWAP has been disrespected, you could say, where price came down below it, but once we broke back above it, it actually acted as very nice support here before continuing higher. So, I would still look at this as kind of being respected in a way, and I think it's still significant. Now let's talk about market structure points that I would not want to lose. And I think there's really two. First, I'll start on the weekly time frame. Because remember I said that I don't really like this as a retracement on the weekly. I wouldn't really call this a weekly higher low. I think it's too quick of a move to really call it like a swing in structure, whereas, this swing to the downside was more of an actual retracement. And technically, even though we didn't close a candle above the lower high right here, we did still take out the lower high. We made a higher high, regardless of if it closed above it or not. Therefore, I would look at this retracement, the low of this retracement, as being the weekly higher low that I'd really not want to see price break. I think, if we start closing candles below this point, we're probably going to come back to the low. Maybe we just SFP'd again, maybe we just continue ranging again, but that, in my opinion, would not be a great sign of strength for the bulls. It would kind of tell me that this attempt to switch market structure bullish was kind of a failure. So I will mark out this low, and I will call that the weekly higher low. So then you go down to the daily. Now I would call this a retracement on the daily, most certainly. So on the daily time frame, structure actually had a further development where I would call this a higher high and then a higher low before the next higher high. So if you're looking at daily structure, then you really wouldn't want to lose this higher low. So I think for a better sign of strength, ideally we put in a higher low and we don't lose either of these points. However, we still could technically lose this point, even close below it on the daily, still put in a higher low on the weekly. That is just something to keep in mind, but it would be a better showing if we could, respect both structures here. I think that's usually more of a better sign of strength. And right now we have retraced pretty significantly. We pretty much gave back most of this expansion leg here. We're pretty close to this higher low. So if you're bullish, then, you'd be hoping that we are, going to start the process of putting in a higher low pretty soon here. And what I would want to see to make me think that a higher low is in is I would like to start seeing signs of strength. And that can come in many ways. You could look for divergences as prices, getting lower, putting in lows, start to see market ciphers show bullish signs, bullish divergences, money flow starting to reverse back to the upside on some of the lower time frames. And while we're on the topic of divergences, I'll go over a few that I'm seeing. We are seeing some bullish divergences print at this low, both locally, and there is even a type of bullish divergence on the daily here. So what do we see as prices potentially putting a higher low relative to this market structure point? Well, we see that momentum has put in a lower low. So this low correlates to this momentum wave, and right now momentum has put in a lower low as prices potentially putting in a higher low. And this is called a hidden bullish divergence. And basically the idea is that while momentum seems to be, getting lower, showing more bearish strength, price is unable to put in a lower low because of that. That is in a way a divergence. And when you pair hidden divergences with other signs of strength, I find that they work better. So typically I like to see lower time frame divs as we're kind of forming these hidden divs. I'd then look for other signs of strength, of course. But that is just something to mention. Also, money flow is not really showing signs of weakness. It is pretty much at the same point that it was at when we put in this low. Money flow has also gone on to put in higher highs since that time. Could definitely just be putting in a higher low before continuing this overall direction of money flow. So, that is something interesting that I saw on the daily. And, essentially the invalidation for this idea would be if we lost this low. If we put in a lower low, then it would no longer be a hidden divergence. So, if we are going to put in a higher low in this area and respect this daily structure, then, well, we will print a hidden bullish div on the daily. Then going to some of the lower time frames, like the 4-hour, we can start to see the trend from the high. We see a downtrend, low, lower high, lower low, and we start to see evidence that that downtrend may be weakening as well. Price barely able to put in lower lows. We kind of got a wick up. Did close below it, but not very significantly. Now we're pulling back up. So there are signs of a weakening downtrend there. Also, we did get some bullish divergences on that last low. So we see that momentum wave put in a higher low as price, if I can click out, put in a lower low. The green dots don't exactly correlate to the lows. They're not going to print right on the lows, but yeah, we do have a bullish div here with price putting in lower lows and the momentum wave is putting in a slight higher low. Also, we see a slight bull div with money flow. Money flow from this point put in a higher low and then another higher low. Very slight, but it is increasing, also kind of showing that curved effect. And it's not exactly a bullish div from back here. It did technically put in a lower low at this point, but the local bullish divs, as well as just the overall curvature, look pretty good, at least for starting signs of strength. I think we could probably see this low be taken out some more. Maybe we come down wicked again, but ultimately it seems like we're trying to get some buying power in here. It's looking like the bulls are trying to hold this area. And we see those same bullish divs on the 3-hour. And, on the 3-hour, money flow does look a little different. It actually did put in a lower low right here, like its lowest point in this recent move. It's actually looking a little worse on the 3-hour, so that's something to keep in mind. But if we go down to the 2-hour, we again have those bullish divs on that local low. And we have a more regional bullish div here with money flow. At least at this point, it has put in a higher low. Compared to where money flow is at back here. And on the 1-hour, very similar things. We see the bullish divs on the low, and we see money flow kind of having that overall curvature to the upside, even if you're looking at it from more of a regional perspective. And Doesn't look like we really had those local bullish divs, but overall bullish div from back here, we did not take out this lowest point. We put in a higher low. And, right now money flow did get a move into the green. Now, it is looking like so far it's a pretty weak move. We immediately turned back into the red, similar to what we did back here and back here. So, that kind of tells me that we're not exactly ready to, try and reverse this downtrend and really start to show strength right now. But it looks like we may be approaching that point based on the divergences that we're already seeing. But again, maybe we have to come back down to the low. Maybe we have to range some more before we actually get the bullish sign of strength. And speaking of other bullish signs of strength, of course, flipping market structure would be one. I think taking out the lower high, which right now is this high, that would be a good sign of strength as well. We come back down to touch the low. Hopefully, again, it's just a wick showing that the downtrend is continuing to weaken, and then we will have a new lower high right here. And one more thing you could look at for a sign of strength, shout out to Flopping Groper. If you do not follow his channel, check it out on YouTube. But you can pull some more anchored VWAPs from the high and look for the bearish strength to break in that sense by breaking above these bearish anchored VWAPs. And I pulled it from two significant highs. Number one, this high, because obviously that's the weekly higher high. That's where this whole downtrend started. And then this more local high, because this was kind of the last high before the aggressive move down, before the last aggressive move. And I didn't really like pulling the anchored VWAP from this point because, there were points where it wasn't really respected that great. We got above it here before falling back down. Sure, we did back test it before going lower. But I think I prefer the anchored VWAP from this point, especially since it's, closer to price. You could look at both of them, honestly, and maybe breaking above both of these anchored VWAPs would be more of a sign of strength. Maybe we only end up back testing one of them for support. So, you could look at both of them. But, yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens if we're able to break market structure, break above some of these anchored VWAPs. And, maybe this development will lead to us breaking the overall bearish anchored VWAP from the all-time high. And maybe then we can actually start to, really reverse. Maybe then you can be pretty confident saying, okay, the higher low is in. And I'll tell you right now, I may be interested in looking for some trades on this asset. I haven't decided if this is going to be one of those assets that I actually buy spot in and hold. But, I can say I am definitely interested in looking for some, swing positions on this asset. But, of course, those, trades, if they do happen, are going to, have to come after a lot more bullish confirmations. I'm going to have to see a very clear setup. And without that, I'm not, risking anything on this asset. I'm not going to, just open along here, put my invalidation below, one of these higher lows. And, then target highs like this. You could if you really want to, but I'm not doing that. I'm going to wait for a better setup because, in my experience, a better setup, number one, increases the probabilities of it playing out, and number two, can give you a much better trade just in terms of risk reward. Like if I can put my stop loss down below this low or even below this green box and, then target, those same areas, the risk reward is going to be better depending on where I enter, of course. Maybe I can even get like a very local trade idea that can play into the higher time frame idea, so then I can have an even tighter stop loss. You guys know how I trade at this point. I really like to look for clear setups. And if I don't see a clear setup here, if this downtrend just continues until we end up taking out these significant levels, then basically I'd really need to see another higher time frame sign of strength before I even consider looking for trades on this again. That's kind of how I'm viewing this. But, as of right now, I am leaning more towards the side of a higher low is probably going to be put in, rather than, us just blasting straight down past these important lows. I am definitely leaning more bullish in this sense, at least locally speaking. Alright, well, I think that's everything I wanted to go over in this one. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel. If you have any suggestions for altcoins you want me to make a video on and do analysis on, leave it in the comments. I may or may not do it. And other than that, I will see you all in the next video.